my first completion as a college player was actually to Coach Price. I was so fired up, I threw an out route on the sidelines and hit my coach.
Awesome. That's fantastic. This podcast is presented by Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow, overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their businesses and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. Welcome back to Beyond the X's and O's. In today's episode, we sit down with Drew Bledsoe, and there is so much here. All right, where do we start? He grows up in a small town in Walla. Dad's a football coach. Talks about that experience, what it was like in Walla. It was the only show in town, the only high school, like old school Americana football movie type stuff, as he explained it. Really didn't jump onto the recruiting scene until his senior year. Why he chose Washington State. First time he gets on a on a plane is to go to University of Miami on a trip because he wanted to get on a plane and go see the U. How about this? His first completion in college football was in a JV game. Yes, in 1990 they played JV football games, and they would go play against the local community colleges. That's his first completion, and then that same week he plays in the second half of the USC game in the Coliseum. And he talks about what it felt like to be in the Coliseum, being a small town kid and looking up at the Jumbotron and seeing himself on the field. The journey of being the first pick of the draft. How about this? I think people forget this about Bledsoe. 3 of his coaches, Bill Parcells, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick. Pretty interesting. He talks about how they're very different, but the similarities that they all share and why they all will be in the Hall of Fame. He talks about why the Patriots' success has been so sustainable. Obviously, we talk about Tommy. All you Tom Brady freaks out there, yes, we talk about Tommy Brady a little bit. He talks about his hardest moment in the NFL and is really, really open and honest about it. We talk about his beautiful family, his 4 kids. But I think the most fun part of this is when he talks at the end about his high school football coaching experience. He coached his boys, but also just was the offense coordinator and quarterback coach at a high school, and how rewarding that has been to him. And that obviously speaks to me as a high school coach now. And then I love the winery stuff. If you don't know about Doubleback Winery, you need to look it up. Drew Bledsoe has established himself as one of the premier wine growers in the industry, winemakers in the industry. And he talks a lot about the parallels between quarterbacking an NFL team and running a highly, highly successful business. And it's really fascinating to hear his take on that. I learned a lot from this pod. I think you'll learn a lot from this pod and come away with some really, really great stories as well. So let's jump in with my dear friend, Drew Bledsoe. Well, excited to have Drew Bledsoe on the pod today. One, a great player, and we'll get into all about his career and how he grew up, but a better person. I've gotten to know Drew over the years, and just a fantastic human being, awesome dad, awesome father, and can't wait to spend the next 45 minutes to hour hearing about his story. Drew, thanks for being on.
Right back at you, big fella, man. It's just been amazing to watch what you've done, obviously, when your career, but then the impact you've had post-career, man, has been even bigger. And I know we'll talk about it more. But even though we're both pretty good players, but man, at the end of the day, the big man upstairs doesn't want to see your stat line. He wants to know who you impacted in the world, man, and you're winning on that front.
Isn't it funny, though? I've never started with a guest this way, but I'm going to pivot a little bit because of what you just said. Isn't it? I get asked this, I'm sure you do too, like, tell me about your career. And I think our careers were so important, and they shaped who we are, and they gave us great opportunities and gave us platforms, yada, yada, yada. But don't you find yourself talking more about parenting and your marriage and what you're doing with you, the winery, and just the post-career stuff more than you do the actual football career stuff?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And we, we are both are and should be, rightfully proud of what we accomplished on the field. But man, the stuff that we've been able to do off the field, that we've been able to use our platforms to influence. And then when you start talking about your kids, shoot, I know you girls are absolutely smoking it on the volleyball court. I've got one buddy whose daughter's playing volleyball, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to talk to Dilfer?" Dude, his girls are the real deal, And so you find out, you end up bragging about your kids and talking about what's going on, and then I know we're going to talk about coaching high school football, but I haven't been doing that now for a few years. I did it for 6, but man, now you get to see the real impact of that. Now these guys come back and they want to tell you all about what they're doing in their work lives now that they're graduated from college. I even had one of them buy me a beer, if you can believe that. So, it's just like, so yeah, man, you're absolutely right. The football stuff was amazing, but the stuff that we've had the privilege of being able to do off the field after the game has been far more gratifying.
Amen. You said it perfectly. All right. Well, we start with each guest this way, and I think it's been a really fun way to start. I want to know all about your high school football experience, your high school athletic experience, your high school experience in general, but specifically, take me through that first start at Walla Walla High School. You're the first time you ever started at quarterback. And then can you remember your first touchdown pass and the play call, what it looked like, the feeling you had? Take me just through that experience.
Well, you and I talked offline earlier about, these kids when they grow really fast and they kind of look like a baby giraffe and trying to figure out where all your body parts are and all that stuff. That was me, man. I was skinny, had big feet, big hands, shockingly a big head too. Matter of fact, when I first started playing 7th grade football, our school colors were white and red. So we were white pants, red jerseys, white helmet. They didn't have a helmet at the middle school that would fit me, so I had to wear a blue helmet from the high school. So I looked like a giant pencil with a big eraser on top of it when I first got going. So, if you'd seen me back, early on, man, you would not have said, "Hey, that guy's going to be an NFL football player." You're like, "Hey, kid, you better do well in school because this is not for you." But my first start though in high school was my sophomore year. Is halfway through the season, and it was not a great one, bud. It was we played Bora High School from Boise, Idaho. They were way better than we were. I did end up throwing a couple of touchdown passes late, but then I ended up in the hospital later that night with I ended up having a bruised liver of all things.
No way.
Which they said that normally you only see a bruised liver in bad car accidents, and it's one of like the 4th or 5th injuries. But the funny story about that is my dad was coaching, and I'm a sophomore, I'm 15, and I'm out there and I get hit in the stomach like hard. I was hurt. I was couldn't catch my breath. And I looked over at the sideline and I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to die or live. And I looked over at my dad and he looks at me and goes, "Get up." I'm like, okay, I guess I just got to get up and go back to the huddle, even though. And then later that night, I think you did feel a little guilty when I ended up in the hospital later that night with a bruised liver. So it wasn't, my first start was not the best one, but.
All right, I'm going to interject there real quick because this just happened to me. So we're at the Elite Eight the other night in Louisville, and Tori, my middle daughter at Louisville, they're playing Georgia Tech, and they win the first, they lose the second set, they're in the third set, and Tori's playing right back defense, and their monster hits a bomb, and it hits Tori right in the Adam's apple, like right in the throat.
Oh no!
And she goes down, and my first instinct was I'm on the edge seat, and I look out and I see her down there, and I yell, and the auditorium, Freedom Hall, is silent. And I go, "Get up now!" I'm so glad she never bruised liver. I'd have felt horrible.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just like that every once in a while that competitive guy that we were when we were playing sometimes carries over onto the field. And my wife's right here, so she probably won't like that I say this, but we get to find out about how competitive our wives are in those situations too.
Yes, we do.
Which is just absolute sweethearts, and Mara's an absolute sweetheart, and I know your wife is too. But then all of a sudden, you sit there next to him with these games, and all of a sudden, you see the tiger come out in them too. It's pretty funny. Sorry, babe. It's true. It's true.
It is. Everybody expects me to be this like hard ass dad, mean to my daughters, and I don't really say a lot. But Cass, my wife, she's the assassin. She's the one that's like, it is hair on her arms is standing up, and it is life or death every single point. They're more competitive than us.
I know, isn't it funny? I love it though. That's why that's one of the many reasons we married him.
Exactly. Let's get back to Walla High. What was a Friday night like? I know both your parents are educators, and I want you to talk about that. But like, what was the Friday night vibe? Or Saturday morning? I know my high school sometimes played on Saturday mornings. What was that game day vibe at Walla High?
Man, it was the coolest. I mean, it's like true, small town Americana, the Friday Night Lights. That was the biggest event in Walla Walla, of the week. Borleski Stadium, with the lights going, and of course we had to play on the old baseball diamond because our field was uneven and all that stuff. But it was interesting. We had after I got drafted, we had one of the sports writers from Boston came out. My dad was still coaching at Walla High School. Walla High, go Blue Devils. And he flew out from Boston and spent a Friday with my dad as he was going to coach high school football. I think they went to go play the Eisenhower Cadets in Yakima. He rode on the school bus with them. And he came back and he was like, man, I didn't know that still existed in America. And this is all the way back in, 93. And it's still that way today. But he was like, man, that was like going into a movie, about small town American football. And that's really what it was like for us, man. And it was just awesome. And, one of the coolest things that I remember too, because as my dad was coaching, I got to be a part of it when I was younger. And then when I got to actually play, but we would always go practice under the lights on Thursday night too. And so that buildup would start on Thursday, and then Friday you wake up and you put on your good sneakers and your game jersey and go to school in your game jersey. The cheerleaders would always bring something and decorate your locker and get you all dialed in for the game. And we didn't get to know who they were until the end of the season, so they would come in really early, and so you come in and your lockers all decorated. Man, it was a big deal, and it was a ton of fun, man. It was so fun.
That is really cool. Now, paint a clearer picture for people that are watching that have no idea what that small town looks like. How many people in the city?
About 30,000. So we really had one high school for the city, so there was only one show in town, we played in the top division in Washington, but we were one of the smaller schools in the top division, so we were kind of the perennial underdog. It was not exactly a pipeline to D1 football. Matter of fact, I think I was the only D1 scholarship guy, in like a decade coming out of Wahai. But it was it was good football. We had fun, and we got to chuck it around pretty good. But I mean, we'd have 5,000 people show up at a game, so 20% of the population or whatever that percentage is would actually show up on Friday nights,
Wow.
So the whole city would come out, man. It was really, really fun.
That's incredible. On road trips, you guys have like the yellow school buses, and they'd put like the paper up, go Blue Devils on the side, and like caravan off to the road game, that type of deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have the Reuter bus that would follow the school bus and that we were on. And we had to travel far, but we had our league. We had schools that were an hour away, two schools that were 3 hours away, one that was 4 hours away. In our league, we actually had one school that was 5 hours away. So we spent a lot of time on those yellow school buses.
That's incredible. Now, I know this too, and we talk a lot about this on this pod, is kind of the dual sport, or in your case, you were football, basketball, and track and field, so 3 sports. One, tell me a little bit about your experience as a basketball player. I know you were in all the throwing events as a track star, but like, what did that do to your competitive nature? What lessons did that teach you? What values did that create in who you were as a football player?
Well, I mean, the first thing I remember is that there was never downtime. Football season ended, and basketball season had already started. So, last game, playoff game, season ends, you're sad, but then, that's on Friday, and Monday you're lacing up your basketball shoes and going to work. And the funny thing for me though, being being the princess quarterbacks that we are, was that on the basketball court, I was actually the enforcer. I was the guy
Yeah.
that would come in and get the hard fouls and come in and foul their best player a couple times and then go sit back down. Get my 6 to 8 points, my 4 fouls, and my 8 rebounds, and go sit back down and cheer on the guys that can actually really play the game. But it was just kind of funny being the princess quarterback, and all of a sudden the basketball court, you switch roles, and you're the guy that's the enforcer.
But don't you think that's important? We've been doing this Elite 11 thing for a long time, and now coaching high school football, and I'm not saying they're wrong if they don't play another sport, but I think there's such value in being what you just said. Like Mark Sanchez talked about it. He said it perfectly. He's a superstar. He's one of the first like ranked quarterbacks when they had the star system came out. But then he would go to his basketball team, which was awesome. I mean, they were unbelievable, and he was the seventh guy. And what he
Yeah.
learned about being the seventh guy, and he's not the lead dude. He's not maybe the voice in the locker room. He's a role player, and how much he learned from that. Did you kind of have a similar experience going from being the dude on Friday nights, and now you're just a guy that's part of the team? It's a different vibe, and you learn different lessons.
Oh, absolutely. You learn so much by playing multiple sports, and you're right. It's not, I'm not going to say right or wrong or indifferent, but especially when kids are young, man, try everything. I mean,
Yeah.
shoot, you never know where those gifts might lie. We were talking about our good buddy Rick's son, Charlie, who's one of the top quarterbacks in California, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. But baseball might be his best sport,
Mhm.
So I always encourage kids to play multiple sports. As a matter of fact, at the high school when I was coaching, with certain criteria to get your name on the back of your jersey. It had to be GPA, you had to do community service, you had to make all the workouts, all that stuff. But one of the 5 criteria was you had to play another sport. And we just felt like it was so important. And it didn't mean you had to go be a star at something, but you had to go do something else rather than just being a football only guy in order to get your name on your jersey.
Well, I'm going to steal that. We are writing that down right now in the office as something to do to incentivize our guys to get the name on the back of their jersey. All right. So you mentioned you're the first D1 guy out of your high school in like a decade. Talk me through when that started, when the recruiting process started for you. What was your first offer? And people got to remember, we're the same age, right? You were a class of 90?
Class of 90, yep.
Yeah, we were both class of 90. You never redshirted. I redshirted. That's why I was a year behind you in the draft,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So back then, talk me through the recruiting process.
Oh man, I mean, compared to today, man, it was the dark ages. I started to get some recognition my junior year. I think as much as anything, just because I had the size and I could throw it pretty hard. But it was certainly far before. I don't think I got I don't even know when I got like my first official offer. I mean, it was just sort of like they sort of started trickling in. But that wasn't until like senior year, like it was not, hey, this kid's a freshman and he's got 4 offers. Like, no, that just didn't, at least for me, that didn't happen, back then. And in order to be recruited, because I was out there in the middle of nowhere in southeastern Washington, I had to push pretty hard. I remember Dad and I sitting down there. We borrowed another VCR from a friend, and we're down there actually like dubbing, tape from one VCR to the other to put together some highlights that we could then go send around. But once we started sending the tapes around, my senior year. Matter of fact, the only place that I really wanted to at least be recruited by that didn't was UCLA. They had Tommy Maddox at
Yep.
the time. It was a year ahead of you and me, and so they did not
Mhm.
recruit a quarterback that year. My dad actually got a nice letter from Terry Donahue a number of years later. God rest his soul. Terry, I know he was a great man. But my dad got a nice letter from him just saying, "Hey, we wish we would have recruited your kid. We should have offered him." But it was, yeah, man, it was so different for us, man. I don't know, what was it like down there in Cali? I mean, you at least had, some more action around you. You weren't stuck truly in the middle of nowhere.
Well, no doubt. I don't think I've ever told you the story. I have a couple stories I'm going to tell you in the midst of this. This is one of them. So before our senior year, we went to Cal Camp. And at Cal Camp, if you remember, I don't know if you remember these names. You obviously remember Steve Stenstrom.
Yep.
He was in our class. Danny Kinneck, is that his name?
Tommy
Kinneck.
Connect.
Tommy Kinneck. He was up from in Oregon, right, and ended up going to Stanford.
Yep.
Isn't
Yep.
that where
They
Tommy
both went to
went?
Stanford. They both, yeah, they
Yep.
both went to
Yeah,
Stanford.
they
Yeah.
both went to
Tommy's
Stanford.
still a good friend, by the way. He beat me out at quarterback in 7th grade.
No
Tommy did.
way.
Yeah, he was at Walla High School. Tommy was, and I ended up playing tight end my 7th grade year, and then he moved away starting 8th grade. Otherwise, man, I probably would have been a tight end, and I would have had to have a real job.
Okay,
But
so
thankfully, Tommy moved away.
this is all going to make sense. And then Dave Barr, who
Yep.
ended up going to Cal, and there was a
Yep.
couple other guys. A guy I think last name Fisher was in our class, went to Duke. A couple other guys. Well, we go to Cal camp, and you weren't there, obviously. And the scuttlebutt, who's the best guy here, and they called Stenstrom L.A. Guns because he had the long hair. He's from Southern California, had the big
Wow.
gun.
Right.
Dave Barr shredded it. There was 14 quarterbacks there. I was number 14. I got moved after the first workout to wide receiver and ended
Oh
up getting
wow.
MVP of the camp at wide receiver. And Dave Barr blew up the camp and got the ride to Cal. But in the midst of this, you were a topic of conversation because we heard about this kid up in Eastern Washington that was better than Tommy Connect. And that was like the big thing. Like neither of you guys were there, but you guys were the dudes. And I didn't even pay any attention to it because I knew I was chicken scratch, and they moved me to wide receiver. They didn't even look. They never even looked at me at Cal. So in fact, my recruiting was mainly tight end, linebacker. I had Oregon, Cal, Stanford until I beat up Jeremy Green, Denny Green's son, in a basketball game. That ended the Stanford dream. But I was being more recruited as an athlete than I was a quarterback. Because you might have been skinny. I was 6'4", 225 and ran 4.6. So I was more the athlete than I was the quarterback when I went to Fresno. So, but I never told you that story that you guys were like, had the separate aura up. These Northwest quarterbacks were better than the California quarterbacks that year. Dave Barr was in my office a few times this year here in Nashville. He lives out here, and we were talking old war stories about that camp. So it's fun to connect with that recruiting class. But my recruiting in California was nothing because I really wasn't that good. But for the Stenstroms and for those guys in Southern California, it was a big deal. They were able to go to camps that I didn't go to. They were able to be seen, and those guys were getting offers in their junior year. For me and some of the other guys, we didn't get them until our senior year.
Oh, right on. Yeah, we were
That's
kind of stuck
crazy.
out in the middle. No, we were stuck out in the middle of nowhere. But it was pretty funny that Tommy and I and we're still great friends, by the way. He's a professor up there in Santa Barbara, some small school up there. But yeah, we're still great friends. He was in my wedding.
Really, I didn't know you guys were that close. That's incredible.
Yeah, we were We were teammates in 7th grade at Pioneer Junior High, and then Tommy moved away. And then when we were coming out, we ended up being two of the top guys on the West Coast, and we both played for the Pie High 49ers
That's amazing.
back in the day. When I was wearing the blue helmet and looked like a big pencil with an eraser on top, he was the quarterback.
That's awesome. All right, so just take me through why Washington State. Take me through kind of what took you there, and then we'll get to our first break.
Yeah, no, the 4 schools that I did only taken 4 trips. I went to Washington, University of Washington, Washington State. Took a trip to Stanford, and then I took a trip to Miami because Dennis Erickson had been at Washington State, so he was in my neighborhood. I think we all knew I wasn't going to go to Miami, but certainly as a small town kid from Walla Walla, I wasn't going to turn down a trip to South Beach. In the middle of the winter. Matter of fact, I think that might have been the first time I was ever on an airplane, if you can believe that. We just did
Really?
not fly with 2 school teachers for parents. Our vacations were always in a station wagon. And I think the first time I ever was on an airplane was when I flew to Miami for my recruiting trip, which was pretty funny. But yeah, and what it came down to for me was a coach. Mike Price was the coach of Washington State, and he's still a great friend to this day. And he came down to see us, and it was like he became a family member almost right away. And that recruiting process is always kind of funny. My parents really let me make my own decision, obviously, but when he sat down at the dinner table and my mom immediately fell in love with him. We all trust our moms in those situations, whether they say anything or you just read body language. But no, Mike Price was the reason that I went to Washington State and ended up having a great experience with him.
When we come back from break, we're going to talk about Coach Price, the legend he is, the connective the connective tissue he still has with the players he coaches and Drew's incredible career at Wazoo. We'll be right back. This podcast is presented by Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow, overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their businesses and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. All right, back with Drew Bledsoe, and I told you over the break, I'm just going to tee you up and let you go as long as you want, say whatever you want. But Coach Price is a legend. Every player that's ever played for him that I've gotten to know can't stop talking about him. So here's your opportunity to brag on Coach Mike Price.
Yeah, Coach Price, I think above all else, coaches always talk about when you're being recruited that they care more about you off the field than they do on the field, and that's a mantra from all coaches that you hear. Very few of them actually really mean that, quite honestly. And especially, and I think it's changed even now, where a lot of times players become kind of commodities. Coach Price was one of those guys that really meant it, and he's still a great friend to this day, not only to me but to my family. He's a guy that I talk to 2 or 3 times a year, and is still just a great friend to this day. As a matter of fact, when I made the decision, to leave early for the draft, I sat down with my family, but I also sat down with him. And as the coach at Washington State, it's better for him if I come back and play for him for another year. But we sat down and he goes, "Yeah, no, I think it's the right time. I think you should go ahead and go. That's what's best for you." And did not push me to try and stay for another year. He knew what was best for me and put that ahead of what was better for Washington State or better for him as personally. So just a truly great person. Left Washington State, had the unfortunate situation at Alabama. Had he stayed at Alabama, he would probably be one of the, go down as one of the all-time great coaches ever. When he got fired there, before they even played a season, before they even played a game, his players who had only been with him for a few months got up and cried, and they hadn't even played a game for the guy yet. And then actually ended up down at UTEP for a little while. And of all places, he was actually able to take UTEP to some bowl games. And I don't know that UTEP has been to very many bowl games in the history of their program. But he's just a wonderful human and is doing great living up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I still see him pretty frequently.
That's amazing. Where'd you start on the depth chart? I'm just curious when you got to Washington State.
I was 3 at the start of the season. There were 2 quarterbacks that had played the year before, Brad Gossen and Aaron Garcia. Aaron went on to be one of the greatest arena football players of all time. But they both had played and had done well the year before. But kind of midway through the season, got the call from Coach Price that I was they were going to play me. So funny story. We had JV games back then. All right, you could go play a JV game, and we would take a JV team and we would go play against the community colleges in the Northwest. We went to play Walla Community College in Walla of all places. So I was back on the same field that I played on in high school against the community college. We had a bye week, and he came and he told me, he goes, "All right, you're going to go ahead and play the JV game down in Walla, and then we're going to start you second half of the USC game." So we went down to USC, and it was set up before the game that's coming out of the second half. I was going to start the second half, and came out and proceeded to throw my first pass. My first completion as a college player was actually to Coach Price. I was so fired up, I threw an out route on the sidelines and hit my coach.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
And, went on to play the rest of the game, and then started the next week against the Beavers at Oregon State, and then started the rest of the way.
That's incredible. What were the nerves like for that first start?
Oh, dude, man, it was such a trip, Trent. Small town kid, and all of a sudden I'm in the Coliseum, right? The LA Coliseum. And I remember so distinctly running out onto the field, and I dreamed about that moment for so long. I was only 18, but but for most of my life, I dreamed about playing big time football. And so I felt like I was in a dream. Like I didn't feel like it was real as I was running on the field. And all of a sudden I looked up, and on the Jumbotron at the end of the stadium, I could see myself on this big screen. And that's when I flashed back, like, oh, this is actually happening. Like, you're actually doing this. This isn't the dream that you've had forever and ever. You're actually on this field now. So you better tighten it up and get ready to play.
That's incredible. And you guys had a pretty innovative offense. I mean, this is 1991, correct? This is the fall of
It was
91 now?
1990,
Sorry, fall of
1990,
1990. Yes,
fall.
fall of 1990. I mean, it was still two-back offense for the most part, and run, play action, 3rd and 12, max protect, drop back, and throw three-man combos between your X, Y, and Z. But you guys, if I remember correctly, and I could be a little wrong here, but you guys are a little more innovative, more of an 11 team, spread people out a little bit, put an extra receiver on the field, had some different combinations of 2x2 sets. Am I correct there? Like, you guys are a little more
Oh yeah,
aggressive in the
absolutely,
passing
man.
game.
We were among the first to. Coach Price was among the first to really start slinging it around. We were
Yeah.
single back. We were single back almost exclusively, and then we would. A big part of our offense was to motion to empty, so we were empty a bunch, back
Yeah.
in 1990, and slinging it around, and it was a lot of fun, man. We were throwing it before throwing it was cool.
Yeah. Well, speaking of throwing it, I get asked all the time what's my favorite football game I ever played in, and I always refer to our matchup in Fresno.
Yeah.
By the way, you're the only person ever beat me at home in my college career.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, one loss at Bulldog Stadium was to you.
We need to sit down sometime, have a couple beers, and put that game on. Because I think, if I remember right, I think there were 4 lead changes in the last 2 minutes. I
Yes,
mean,
and
it was a true shootout.
it was insane. It was like, now we see it, what, 25 times a weekend now. So I think the modern day football audience would be like, that looks like a typical Thursday night ESPN game or Saturday game or Sunday game. But back then, it was incredible. I don't know what the final score was. I know you guys ended up with more than us, and you dropped a dime in man coverage when you finally got the ball back at the very end to beat us. But that was one of the funnest games I'd ever played in. And for me, you were way more established than I was at that point. And for me, it was like, okay, that's the big dog. That's the guy I'm chasing. I need to match him blow for blow. And I just think, I don't know why I even brought that up, except that in my memory bank, right? You play all these years of college football, you play all these games in the NFL, you have your high school experience. Of all the games I played in, that is probably the most memorable in terms of what it did for me as a player, even though we lost.
100%, man. And it was truly, you hear people say whoever had the ball last was going to win. That's one of those games. Whoever had the ball last was going to win that game, and thankfully we had it last. But I remember, giving you a hug after the game, and you said something about "we'll see you in the show" or something cocky like that. I don't,
I was the worst.
But it was true. It was like, yeah, no, like, because I think, you know, I hadn't said it out loud and I hadn't made the decision yet, but I think everybody kind of figured I was probably going to jump. And then the next year you were that guy, and I knew about you coming into the game, but man, that was a game where, like, oh no, this guy's actually got something, man. He's going to be a dude.
That was crazy. What was like in your college career? Because you had it. I mean, you really had this like dream college career. You start as a freshman, halfway through your freshman year, you leave after 3 years, you're the first pick of the draft. You had to have gone through some bit of adversity in college. And maybe it was off the field, maybe it was on the field. I don't know what it was, but I got to believe something was really, really hard in your college career. Can you enlighten us on that?
Well, the first one was my freshman year when they decided I was going to be the starter.
Okay.
Because you had Brad Gossam was a 5th-year senior. Aaron was a redshirt sophomore, so he'd been there 3 years. Goose had been there for 5 years, and the great guys, man, and they'd played their asses off, and they were really good to me. I mean, it was not like they were not being divisive, but the team was really divided into 3 camps. You had like
Oh,
the
wow.
freshmen that were my class that were had my back, and then you had Aaron had his guys that he came in with that really thought he should have been the starter all along. And then Goose had all the old guys And, so for me, man, that was the first time I was like, wow, okay, well, I'm going to be the guy here ahead of these guys that I really respect. And trying to figure out as an 18-year-old, how to navigate that kind of situation was really the first one. And then, quite honestly, man, my second, so that first year we finished 3-8. The next year we were 4-7. I mean, we weren't winning a bunch. I think my sophomore year, that's I think the only Pac-10 record, now the Pac-12 record that I still own. I think, or the most times ever sacked in a season. I think I got
Oh,
sacked
wow.
56 times. I got sacked 56 times in 11 games. So
Oh,
we
my
weren't
goodness.
exactly stalwarts up front. The next year we had a pretty good offensive line. But no, I got my ass knocked off my sophomore year. And then my junior year, we came back, and that's when we were better. Finished. I think we finished 8-3 or something like that, or
Well,
9-3.
that makes a lot of sense because losing's hard, right? I mean, we forget sometimes we make this game so complicated. Losing football games is hard, and I always say this is it's exponentially harder than losing a basketball game or a baseball game or a soccer game because you got to wait an entire week and eat it for a week, right? And as a quarterback, you're
Absolutely,
basically eating that losing sandwich for a week because regardless of what the reasons are, you take the brunt of it.
no question, man. It all falls on your shoulders.
Yep, and all those coaches in the office finding a way to blame you, and no player wants to take the responsibility, even though he missed 6 assignments and dropped 2 balls or missed 9 tackles. Somehow it's the quarterback's fault. So losing is hard. So just the fact that you had the divided camp as a freshman with guys that are good dudes and older, and then you didn't win a lot your first couple of years, I can now understand how that hardened you.
Yeah, no, it did. I mean, of all the attributes it takes to be a successful quarterback, being able to deal with that adversity and come back and go the next play, the next game, and man, that's way at the top of that list. And I know you mentor all these quarterbacks coming through, and the physical attributes are pretty. If you're going to list things that allow a quarterback to be successful, man, the being able to throw it hard is probably like number 7. I don't know where you put it on the list, but it's way down there. But right at the very very top of that list is the resiliency, and being able to control your emotions and come back and go. Whether the last game was great or bad, you got to be able to go forward every single series, every single play, every single game. And I know you see these guys come through all the time that, man, you put them in shorts and go play catch, like, dude, that guy's a dude, that guy looks special. And then all of a sudden they never end up showing up because they can't handle that adversity. They can't deal with the inevitable failure that comes with playing quarterback, and also can't then deal with, as you said, sometimes it's not your fault, but you still have to wear it because you're that guy. And guys that aren't able to stand up underneath that pressure are just never going to make it, regardless of what they look like in shorts playing catch.
Amen. And I'm actually going to add a little commentary to that before we go to our second break. It's been amazing. I mean, we've had the greatest that have ever lived on this show, you being one of them. Not one time has a Young or an Aikman or a Favre or a Bledsoe mentioned in their journey, oh man, my arm was awesome, right? Or I could
Yeah.
throw it better than the next guy. We all know we could, right? But not once has
Hmm.
that come up in all I think this is episode 20 now. And not
Hmm.
one time have the best of the best that have ever lived put throwing a football higher than what you just put it at 7. And yet we go to these recruiting services, and yet guys are still getting recruited on how they spin it. Now, I say this, you have to throw it well enough. You have to be big enough. You have to be athletic enough. You have to be tough enough. You have to have enough traits. But you just said it perfectly. It's all the other stuff. It's the intangible stuff. I always say it's maybe the hardest thing in my experience. And you tell me you can agree or disagree here. I thought the hardest thing wasn't the media. I thought the hardest thing, whether it was high school, college, or the NFL, was walking into the locker room the next day after a loss. So not immediately after the loss, but the next day after the loss, after everybody had read everything, after everybody made all their excuses, after everybody had found a way to blame you, whether you played good or bad. You walked in that locker room the next day and every eye was on you on how you were going to react because you're eating the crap sandwich. Is that kind of fair to say?
Oh, totally, man. And then you sit there with the entire offense and watch the film, and the film don't lie. And you sit there and you make a bad play, and it's there for everybody to see, and you got to wear it, and you got to own it, and you got to step up and say, yeah, man, the game would have gone different if I hadn't done that. And you got to own it. And and you're right. The outside stuff is one thing. You can compartmentalize the outside stuff. They usually don't know what's going on anyway. You and I both played some pretty bad games that we won.
Yes.
And we both played some great games where we lost. You go in and you play your ass off and you don't win and you still have to wear it publicly. That's all outside. But if you come back in and even if you won the game and you go put on the film and like, man, I really played bad, but hey, thank you guys, really pick me up, but you got to sit there with your teammates and you got to wear it. And, you're the one guy that touches the ball every single play. So it's a heavy burden, and you can either stand up under it or you hide from it. And if you hide from it, man, it doesn't last very long. But, you think about, you look at Peyton, for example. Late in his career, dude, he won a world championship. And Trent, you and I can both go out right now without warming up and throw it better than he could throw it when at the end of his career. I know Elway had to have been just like sitting up there watching this, like, dude, I'm 54 years old and I can go down and throw it better than Peyton can right now. But because he did all the other stuff and anticipation, leadership, all of the real quarterback things, the throwing thing was kind of secondary. Can you imagine how good Peyton would have been if he could throw a spiral? Man,
oh my gosh,
it would have been unbelievable.
He might have been a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah, he might have been pretty good if he could have thrown a spiral. Peyton, I hope you listen to this someday. But man, you would have been special if you could have thrown a spiral, bud.
It's so true. Well, that was awesome. When we come back, I want to get into Drew's professional career. What he's doing post-career is amazing, and give him a great chance to talk about his incredible family. We'll be right back. Beyond the X's and O's is brought to you by State Farm. Just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates for your car insurance, I want to share with you a surprisingly great moment from my career, and it came from Super Bowl 35, and it came actually when I was playing terribly. I started off the game brutal, couldn't hit anything, missed Brandon Stokely wide open on a crossing route, and Jamal Lewis in the flat. I didn't have enough energy. We're at a TV timeout. I'm sitting there in the huddle waiting for the play call to come in, and we substitute Sam Gash onto the field. And Sam Gash, my favorite teammates of all time, comes up to me, grabs me by the chest plate and says, "We need your juice. We need your energy. You're not yourself today." I said, "You know what? You're right." And immediately I had that spark. The hair on my arm stood up, and that was the series through the first touchdown to Brandon Stokely of Super Bowl 35. And that's why I love the journey of the quarterback. There's so many surprisingly great lessons to be learned from this unique position. And remember, whether you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback or an armchair QB relaxing happily at home, State Farm provides coverage that meets your needs at a price that fits your budget. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. All right, back with Drew Bledsoe. Talked about the high school experience, the college experience, a bunch of fun stories in between. And Drew, we've been intentional on this show not to dive too deep into the NFL stuff. And here's why, because you can watch your football life or get on Wikipedia or read all the articles. If you want to know about Drew's incredible football career and all his stats and the 4 Pro Bowls, and I think you were the youngest Pro Bowl quarterback at the time ever voted in 95, I believe.
It was after the 94 season. Yeah. I was just a kid.
Yeah, all these incredible accolades. And I'll be the first to tell you, as his peer, as somebody played against him in college and pro, incredible player, does not get enough credit. But I guess where I want to go with your NFL career is you had some unique coaches, right? So you had a very unique coaching tree that you played under. You've played with a bunch of Hall of Famers. But the journey of your NFL career, and this can be a little esoteric if you want, but just sum up the journey of your NFL career, what you learned, how it applied to what you're doing after football, any funny stories within there that you don't get a chance to tell on ESPN or when you're doing an article. I just want to tee up and go, and then I'll pivot as you get to certain areas in your career. But I just want you to have the freedom to tell your NFL story any way you want to tell it.
Well, the first thing that jumps to mind is, look, I was 21 and, end up in Boston, craziest sports town in America. And as a 21-year-old, I'm installed as the figurehead and leader of a franchise. And, I know you remember what that was like. The first time you step in the huddle with a bunch of grown ass men that have families and investment portfolios, and you step in the huddle and you're the guy that's got to lead these guys.
Well, crap, some of them were smoking cigarettes at halftime. Let's not forget.
This is a little while ago, right? There's still ashtrays on the lockers. And I remember one time specifically my my rookie year. So Bruce Armstrong was our left tackle, and Bruce is the baddest dude on the planet. He should be. You talk about guys that should be in the Hall of Fame. He's the guy that they should have put in. But Bruce was and he didn't talk to rookies. We're great friends now, and we've been great friends for many years. But man, you talk about an intimidating dude. And I stepped into the huddle, and he was talking with some other guys. And I stepped into the huddle. I was like, all right, shut up. And I remember, like, after the play, like, Pat Harlow, who was our right tackle, comes to me. He's like, dude, you just told Bruce to shut up. And I was like, oh, is that bad? And he goes, well, I'm scared right now, and you should be really scared. And so Bruce comes over to me, and he like puts his hand on my shoulder, and now I'm really scared. And he goes, hey, I know what you're trying to do, but don't ever tell me to shut up again. I'm like, yes, sir, Mr. Armstrong. And then I had to go, change my pants. And so, I mean, you're in there, and all of a sudden, and so, I mean, it was heady, crazy times. And the nice thing, and the thing that I remember, and this is, advice that I know you would echo and share with any of these young guys that come in. The only way you do that is by doing the work. The guys have to see your car there when they arrive in the morning. Your car's got to be there before everybody else. And when they leave to go home, your car's still got to be there. And even later in my career, sometimes it was, I'd come in and have a cup of coffee and read the paper, but everybody saw my car in the parking lot when they arrived, and everybody saw my car was still there when they left. And so, if you do the work and put it on the field and keep your mouth shut, then eventually, after, a few years, you get to a point where then you can be that voice and you can be that vocal leader. But man, you have to earn the right to do that when you step into a huddle like that. But yeah, man, the coaches I had in New England, pretty crazy, right? Bill Parcells already in the Hall of Fame. Pete Carroll will be in the Hall of Fame, and then Belichick. Had Belichick for my last 2 years, and obviously, he's arguably the best guy to ever do it. So the interesting thing, though, about those three guys is that their personalities outwardly were so different. Parcells loved being in front of the media, just like loved berating people, and he was just mean as hell. But just a big personality, all Jersey and. And then you got Pete, who's kind of like West Coast positive, upbeat guy, which the media in Boston kind of ate him up for that, especially following Parcells. And then we all know what Belichick, is like. It's just all business. It's just, it's almost robotic. At least like during the, it's just moving the chess pieces around, and there's not much emotion involved in it. But the interesting thing is that at the core of those three guys who've all been great, it was all the same things. It was attention to detail. It was working. It was, doing what you're supposed to do. It was competing your ass off every day. All of the values were the same, but they could not have been presented in more different ways. Parcells was actually pretty funny as long as he wasn't yelling at you, because he was pretty creative in how he made fun of guys. He told one of our defensive linemen one time in the meeting, we were talking earlier about, you got to wear it in the meeting. Well, he'd come into the big team meeting, and he told one of our defensive linemen, he's like, hey, I might as well just put a pile of dog shit at defensive tackle because maybe somebody would slip in it. And everybody's just like, oh, dude, okay, that's really funny, but I'm glad it wasn't me, and and then Pete was all upbeat and positive, and then Belichick was just very businesslike. You either do your job or you're fired, and that's kind of the way it worked.
That's interesting, because you mentioned all very different personalities, but same core values, all obviously going to be Hall of Famers. Attention to detail, right? The way you do small things, the way you do all things. Because you
Yep.
played for other coaches too in the NFL. Did you ever see a coach that was able to win that wasn't hyper aware of all the little things that go into the process of winning a game?
No, man. The NFL, man. Every single game, and it's always so funny. I know you get this question all the time, just like I do. Do you think Alabama could beat Jacksonville? Like, dude, you got to be kidding me. The Jacksonville Jaguars
Even by 100.
the Jacksonville Jaguars are a couple of plays away from winning against you know now, I mean, they get blown out from time to time, but the Jacksonville Jaguars can beat the best team in the NFL on a given Sunday.
Yep.
And from the difference between the very best teams and the very worst teams in the NFL is so slight that every single little detail has to be right. I mean, you probably know the percentage. I don't know off the top of my head, but how many NFL games in the course of a season? What percentage are one score games?
Yeah.
It's most of them. It's most
Yep.
of them, right? At the end of the season, most of the games end up being one score football games. And so now you're talking about one play in the course of a game that's going to change the outcome. And in order to, consistently win, man, there are no small details, man. There are only details, and everything has to be right.
Yep, I always laugh this time of year, whether it's college or pro hiring cycles, when we start hearing about, oh, this guy's going to be great with the media. This guy's charismatic. Oh, he's a player's coach. He's going to be a great head coach because of these narratives that don't matter. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you, if you can let me just go watch him prepare on a Sunday night after a loss into a Monday morning, coach a walkthrough on a Wednesday morning into a Wednesday practice, see how he does red zone, short yardage install, see how he organizes his film study and his notes, and like you're saying, every part of his week. Then I'll tell you whether he could be a good head coach or not. But it really doesn't have a lot to do with all the stuff you're talking about, because I never played for a coach that won that didn't take and I always say this, everything they do is the most important thing in the world when they're doing it in that moment. It's not even details. It's everything is the most important thing. That's the highest level football coach, as I experienced, and those are the guys that win.
People ask me all the time, why are the Patriots so successful year in and year out? They were down last year, but all of a sudden now they're back on top again. One of the things that they do that surprisingly is somewhat unique in the NFL is that they coach technique from the beginning of the first OTA through all the way through the season. And that's why you've always seen those Patriots teams, they may have a little lull in the middle of the season or whatever, but by the end of the season, all of a sudden they look better than everybody else. And they are so meticulous in how they teach. I remember being out there for like this fantasy camp where they had a bunch of accountants, which actually was kind of funny too, because you know how fun it is when you actually get to go throw footballs at non-athletes.
People that can't catch them, it's target practice. Yeah.
Oh man, it's so funny, and you just you try not to hurt anybody, but it is pretty funny. But I went out there, but I was there with one of the assistant offensive line coach who was working underneath Dante Scarnecchia, and I went over to the O line section because I just wanted to go listen to what he was telling these guys about. And he goes, "All right, I'm going to take you through what we do with all of our offensive linemen the first day of every camp." And they would go through at literally quarter speed, one step at a time. All right, here's how you pass set. All right, you take this first step. Now, when you take that step, you've got to be here, but your weight's got to be on the inside edge of that outside foot so that you can come back in. But then you're going to say, and he would say they would do that with their 10-year veterans, and then they do it every single time. And so now you watch how those guys do, and you get all those years that they were winning with Tommy. That was a lot of different offensive line groups that were together. And all of a sudden, he's got a bunch of time. And it's not because they just went and drafted the best guy. It's because they brought these guys in and then they taught them how to play football. And they do it every single day. Whether it's a receiver running a route, they don't just run lines on the paper. They're like, no, you run this way and you plant your foot this way at this exact angle. Your eyes go here, your heads go here, and then and they teach it. Which to me, that was sort of surprising, Trent. And I know that you've seen this forever and ever. The players in the NFL are the very best in the world. The officials are the very best in the world. the coaches are not always the best in the world. There's some guys that are in the NFL ranks that are not great coaches, and that doesn't fly with the Patriots, man. They coach every single day.
Well, I'll even be meaner than you. It's not some. It's at times in my career it was the majority. There were more bad coaches than there were good coaches, and you just nailed it right there. I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second. I'm watching the Raiders Cowboys a few weeks ago, and the Raiders are running split zone, and they ran it. They must have run it 18 to 20 times in the game, and the backside of the Cowboys defense didn't know how to wrong arm, didn't know how to spill, didn't know how to backfill in the linebackers on split zone. The easiest, I mean, the most common run play in all of football from high school up to the NFL. And you could tell that these really talented Dallas Cowboys players, and I like the Cowboys this year, but they had not been taught the technique, not the scheme. They hadn't been taught the technique to stop split zone on the backside. And then I'm watching the Patriots, I can't remember, a week later, and a team's trying to run ISO on them. And the linebackers filling at the perfect angle, you know, same foot, same arm, stoning the guard. So the back has to bounce it. Well, he's bouncing it to a defensive end that has both arms extended, shoving the tight end back into the hole. And I'm like, you could just see the technique pop on the Patriots defense when you couldn't even see a semblance of technique from the Cowboys defense against split zone. So it is pretty amazing how the Patriots have been able to sustain this because of what you just said, that attention to detail and the attention to technique, which at some levels just gets ignored.
Absolutely. You know, you look at these guys and like, well, it's not working. We'll just get a different player and put him in there. And like, these guys are all the most talented athletes in the world, right? And you know, if you know you draft a guy and he doesn't work out, well, I mean, sometimes it's the player's fault, but a lot of times you bring a guy in that's talented, but you don't teach him how to do it. Well, he's not going to be very successful, you know.
Let's get back to your career. The one thing I find myself talking to a lot of young quarterbacks about is money makes you more of what you were before you got it. And that doesn't always mean good or bad. But for me, it was small town, not very sophisticated, given a lot of money at a young age. I was married. We got married in college. So I didn't handle the money very well. It overwhelmed me. I didn't have the sophistication or the network of people to help me understand how to deal with that type of money at a young age. Did you experience a similar thing being a small town kid? You didn't play at a SEC school, like off you go to Boston and they hand you all this cash. Was that tough?
My mantra now is money and alcohol reveal character.
Yeah.
You know, like it makes you more of, you said it, you know, makes you more of who you are. You know, thankfully for me, I mean, we, you know, same deal. My parents were school teachers. We didn't know anything about
Yeah.
money. Matter of fact, you know, you get that first check and that's, I mean, $1 million is infinity money, you know, so thankfully I just offloaded that and good financial people to watch out for it. And, you know, I mean, didn't know how to spend money. I figured it out later. I figured out.
now you're a pro.
Yeah, now I'm really good at spending it. So, you know, decided, I like wine. I should start a winery. You know, but that always makes sense. But yeah, I mean, you know, and for me, the way that I was able to navigate that honestly was just the ball. You know, that was the simplest part of my life at that point, was what was in the meeting room and on the football field. You know, that was where I was like, okay, this is familiar. Everything else was completely unfamiliar. You know, in a big city for the first time, you got, you know, what, 4 or 5 different newspapers to deal with, and you know, you got you know, money that you don't have a clue what to do with, and you got to try and handle all of that stuff. For me, you know, I found my refuge in football, so that actually was kind of a saving grace for me, was that at the end of the day, I just got to go to the meeting and go on the football field, and that part I kind of knew how to do. The other parts I really didn't understand, and so I didn't even try to understand them. Honestly, I just made sure I had good people around me, and you know, that allowed me to get through it reasonably well. I do remember though, into my rookie season, we won our last 4 games my rookie season. We were 1-11. We won our last 4, so we ended on a high note, even though we were 5-11. But at the end of that season, I got in my Suburban and I drove across the country by myself and went skiing in Colorado and Utah with an old ski bum buddy. But I just remember getting in the car and starting to drive, and like, wow, that was crazy, right? I mean, that was overwhelming, right? Dealing with all of that stuff. And it was a good time for me to kind of decompress and unwind. And then, I didn't tell anybody I was skiing because we weren't supposed to ski back then, but I went and slid around on the slopes and kind of got back to some sense of what I would call normal at that point, and kind of unwound after the season. But yeah, it was crazy times, man, trying to deal with all of the things that you deal with as a highly drafted quarterback from a small town without much, real education on how to deal with all of that stuff. It was crazy.
What was the hardest thing you ever went through in your career?
From a football standpoint, was when I got hurt and Tommy came in, because I'd been the guy for 8 years and change, and was the the franchise quarterback for the Patriots, and then I get hurt and go to the hospital and almost die, and then what 6 or 7 weeks later get a clean bill of health so that I can come back. And in the meantime, the team had been playing great. Tommy was doing well. He wasn't the Tom Brady that he is now. He was just just a guy at that point. But I come back and I'm healthy, and my job's not there. That was for me that required a little soul searching. You go through all these things like, well, screw these guys, man. I'm gonna retire. They can't treat me like this, and all of that. But thankfully, I got my head straight after a day. Came back, went to work, and supported Tom. Which by the way, it was easy to support him because he's a good dude. If he was a jerk, it would have been a lot harder. But that part for me was really a pride swallowing, tough situation to go through, where you've been this guy for this long. And I hadn't been on the sidelines when I was healthy since I was a sophomore in high school. And all of a sudden I'm healthy and I got to stand on the sidelines, man. That was a hard time to go through. I do always remind people, though, that when you talk about the hardships of being a professional athlete, you always have to step back and recognize, well, I got to be a professional athlete. So we don't need to go have support groups for Drew and Trent. We were getting paid to play a game. But at the same time, man, it is your profession, and it is something you've done for a long time. And that was really, really hard to deal with, not being the guy for the first time in, well over a decade.
So this Man in Arena thing's out with Tom, and you've been interviewed multiple times for it. Is there a funny story that was left on the cutting room floor that didn't get shown in the documentary?
I haven't watched it. I love Tom, but I've seen the story, man. I don't need to hear more about Tom.
I hear you. I'm the same way. I haven't watched one episode.
And that's not, we all respect the hell out of Tom and everything that he's done, but I'm pretty well versed in that story. Pretty sick of talking about him. But I will tell you though that Tom always was a guy. Even the first year he was on practice squad, and then the next year it was actually going into that season, it was kind of a toss up as to whether Tom or Damon Heward was going to be the backup. And I think Damon had actually maybe been the backup, the week before I got hurt. And then we had 9/11 and then came back out of that. I think if I'd gotten hurt game 1, I think Damon was the guy that would go on the field. Now we'd be sitting here talking about Man in the Arena with Damon Heward, right? But the biggest thing I will say about the kid, though, I remember calling. It's like I was kind of going into that. Maybe it was his rookie year, maybe it was his second year. I actually called my financial advisor and was like, "Hey, you know what? This kid's a good kid. He's going to be around for a long time. He's probably never going to be a starter, but this is a guy that's going to stick. And I think you'd like working with him because he's just a good guy, right?" And my financial advisor was like, "Well, yeah, we don't really, take practice squad guys. It doesn't really have any money to manage anyway." But I knew that he had something special in terms of how hard he worked, what a grinder he was. And, you know, uh, nobody would have envisioned that he would go on to be one of the best of all time. Uh, but I did know that he was going to be a guy that was going to be around just because of the way that he worked at it.
So did your financial advisor take him on?
No, he didn't. He didn't. I think he
Oh
probably
my
regrets it now
gosh.
because he could have had some of that Giselle money to manage now. You know, if he if he'd taken on Tommy.
That is literally
But
the
I think,
worst mistake he ever made.
yeah, I think he's just fine.
Tell me about the Jerry Maguire cameo.
Oh man, yeah. So first of all, so when Cameron Crowe was writing the script for Jerry Maguire, that was right about the time I was going to the draft. So Cameron Crowe followed me around for the entire draft experience. And
Oh,
so when
okay.
you and so the crazy thing for me of watching that movie was a lot of the scenes in that movie, particularly around the draft and then some of the hotel stuff and obviously a lot of artistic license with that are like, oh yeah, no, that was from when he was following me there. That was when he was following me there because he followed me around through that whole thing. Probably my favorite funny story from Jerry Maguire though is there's in the opening credits there's a picture of our family in the opening credits, and it's me and mom and my brother. Well, my dad was in that picture, but they cropped dad out of it and put Tom Cruise in. And so my dad was like, "Oh, this is my one time to ever be on the big screen." And they cropped me out of it and put Tom Cruise in my place. And so dad's been a little bit salty about that movie forever and ever. Amen. Because it's like the one time he was ever going to be in a movie, even for a split second. And they cut him out and put in Tom in his place.
They must put Tom on a box or something so he fit in.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, talk to me. Are you as impressed with Mac Jones as I am? I just see the word I keep using is professional. He just looks like a professional playing the position at a young age.
Yeah, man, and and they're giving him a lot, in terms of
Yeah.
managing motions, formations, shifts, all that stuff. It's not the offense that you and I probably had when we were a rookie, where it was they dumbed it down for us so that we could figure it out. He's got a lot of moving pieces, and he's acting like a pro right away. He's never going to be a guy that's going to overpower you with his arm. He's not going to be Lamar Jackson, go out and run around and beat you with his legs. But he operates with great precision. We talked, just earlier about Peyton and about how Peyton managed the game, didn't knock people over with his arm, especially later in his career. But he does everything right, and most importantly, and you and I both know, when you're a quarterback, it's almost like you're a doctor. You got to take the Hippocratic Oath: first, do no harm. And he
Yes.
never ever makes or very very rarely makes a mistake that hurts the team. And then when they're playing defense the way that they are, as long as he manages the game, does what he's supposed to do, throws it on time, and never makes the big mistake, they're going to win a lot of games. And I remember Belichick saying, maybe like our first year, second year, into the first year, start of the second year that I was with him, he would say, we have to learn to play a certain way.
Yep.
And what he meant by that was that, and you see it with them all the time, and it's been maybe one of the biggest keys to their success, is they never lose games. And I remember Belichick saying, first we have to learn how to not lose games. And so you watch them play, they're never the one that they never make the play to lose the game, but the other team does. And they just wear you down with execution, game in and game out. And Mac is doing a great job with that. I was back there a couple of weeks ago, got to say hi to him, talk to him for a second, but I talked to Kraft a lot about him. And they've all been extremely impressed with exactly what you said, his professionalism, the way that he works at the game, the way that he prepares. I think he's in the right place for himself, with a great organization, and they're building around him. But I think he's going to be a good player for a long time.
Yeah, amen. All right, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to hit three more things. I'll let you decide how long you talk about each one. Number one, coaching high school football and coaching your sons. I want to talk about the wine because I'm probably your biggest fan. Have been basically since the launch. and then just your family, and you can take that any direction you want.
Yeah.
I want to hit those
Yeah.
three things and go.
The coaching thing, and I know that you're officially now, coaching, but you've been coaching for a long time with the Elite 11, with all the quarterbacks and all of that stuff. And I think the thing that impressed me most the first time I brought my son John down there, I think we were in Oakland, and I got to hear you talk to the guys. And I just came away so impressed because when you talk to the guys, you talked about character. You talked about all of the non-throwing, non-physical parts with these guys that have all the physical parts because they're there. And I came away so impressed with how you had approached that with those guys. And for me, coaching high school football, we did win, but winning was like just the happy side effect of talking about character, work ethic, execution, being a good teammate, being a good person, being good in your community, being good at home. The winning becomes the kind of the side effect of that, because you get to teach these guys lessons in a football environment that are hard to teach outside of that environment. And they're things that they carry with them forever and ever. And for me now, the reward that I get now from those guys is that a lot of these guys now have graduated college and they're working, and they'll come back and they'll talk about things that they learned on the football field that are now important in their lives. And coaching my kids, was also it was also cool because there are certain things that you can say to your own kids, my own sons, in a football environment that you maybe can't say around the dinner table, and impart lessons to my sons and to their friends, in a football environment that you can't necessarily maybe say in another environment. So I just think it's so important, Trent, and it's I know football's been under attack for a long time, and it doesn't have to be just football. It's whatever when you're a part of something where you're a part of a team and learn what that's all about, whether that's the band or whether that's drama or whether that's, another sport. But being a part of something like that is so important. And, that mentor role that you and I are blessed to be in with these kids is so important and so gratifying. And for at the school that we were at, there were a lot of kids that went home and had two parents and had a pretty nice life at home, but there were a lot of kids that didn't. And so this football environment and the coaches, that becomes their family. And when you see those kids that maybe didn't have a positive male role model in their lives, and they go on to have success, man, it's the most gratifying thing I've ever done. And my dad did it for 30 plus years. And I told him after like 2 years in, I was like, oh yeah, now I understand why you did this. Now I understand why these kids that I didn't know anything about all of a sudden were sleeping at our house, a couple nights and having dinner with us. I didn't understand then. Now I do. And for me, the selfish thing that I did with these guys was every year when they would graduate high school, I would bring them over, and I started keeping notes, I don't know, 15 years ago, just like on my phone. I would just write little notes, things I wish I knew when I was a kid, things I wish I knew when I was 18. So I call it the rules. And I've written it down. Some of them are funny, some of them are really serious. But on the back side of that was a gift certificate for a bottle of wine when they turned 21. But the selfish part, and I know you'll appreciate this, is that they have to come see me to get their bottle of wine. And so they turn 21, they're a senior in college, maybe getting ready to go to work. They got to come back and see me, and I get to catch up and hear about what's going on in their lives, man. And that's when we really get the reward. You get to see what that impact is that you had on them down the road.
That's incredible. Well, you segued yourself to the wine. For those of you that don't know, Drew has started a winery that is as good as any winery there is in the country. His Doubleback label, as well as other labels he has, are incredible. He's blowing up. Wine Spectator just rated him really high. I read this recently, Drew, so I'll let you brag on the winery. But more importantly, what lessons did you learn in football that helped build this wine empire?
It's been really gratifying, Trent, and this kind of ties back to coaching and what you and I've had the privilege to do, is that at a high level, at a 30,000-foot level, quarterbacking a football team and running a business are the same thing. They're the same things that allowed the good teams that I was on to be successful are the same things that allow our business to be successful. We talked earlier about there are no small details. There are only details. Like, we literally compete at every single aspect of our business. It's things like, dealing with adversity, like we talked about earlier. I mean, shoot, going through the last 2 years where we've all dealt with incredible adversity, our team stepped up and excelled, dealing with the adversity. It's dealing with conflict within the team, and I like just all of these things that go into being a successful football team, translate directly into business. Probably the most meaningful part for me, though, over the past couple years, is that we've embarked on this sustainability initiative, which, that's a big word. You hear it thrown around a lot. The obvious part is, being sustainable with the environment, and we do a lot of things on that front. We try to create ecosystems in the vineyards where, we encourage, a natural environment rather than having to use pesticides and herbicides and so on. And so we don't have to spray because of the environment we create. But the more meaningful part has been the people sustainability piece of our business. Our business is rooted firmly in two things: great land and great people. But on the people sustainability part, we now have our own farming company where, most farm labor, particularly in northern climates, is seasonal, where, farm workers will come and they'll work for 6, 7, 8 months, and then they go back home. Well, we now have this group of 10 people that work for us full time. They have retirement benefits and health benefits. They're the highest paid farm workers in the Northwest. And for the first time, they have some stability in their family lives. Josh, who's our winemaker and CEO, he and I, we did that because we think it's the right thing to do. We want our moms to be proud of us, and we want to be proud of the guy looking at us when we brush our teeth in the morning. But the cool thing that we've discovered in embarking on this initiative and taking care of the land and taking care of our people is that we actually produce a better product because of it. Now these farm workers who forever had just been contract labor bouncing around, now they have a real connection to our land and to the vines that they take care of, and they treat them like they're their own. So our vineyards look better than everybody else's. And now all of a sudden, we've got better fruit because we take care of the people and take care of the land. And so it's been really, really gratifying to learn that doing things the right way and doing things from a pure, just do the right thing perspective have actually produced a better product. And that part we're really, really proud of, because it's like, okay, we're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing. But doing the right thing actually ends up with better juice in the bottle. And now we're like, man, that's such a great win. So that part's been really, really gratifying.
That is awesome. I'm so glad you had the chance to talk about that. I had no idea, and I follow Doubleback pretty closely. So that's incredible. All right. On our last moments, Mara and the kids, brag on them. Give them the shout out.
Oh, man, hey, we are empty nesters.
Yep.
Healy was our youngest, off to college, and all of a sudden now we're trying to get used to that. Although my wife did go shopping today because all the kids are coming home, and she's like, "Wow, it's the first time I had to actually really fill up a shopping cart in quite a while." So that's been an adjustment. Two of the boys actually have jobs, if you can believe that. We got two off the payroll.
Yeah, real jobs. On, like, you're not paying the Amex anymore.
Well, let's not get carried away. But they never really leave. But so yeah, they're both down in they're actually both down in San Diego. Stu, our oldest, got a degree in wine business. So of course I was thinking he'd come back and go to work for the family biz, but of course he's working for an internet startup. Because why would you come back and work for dad?
Naturally.
And then John's working in commercial real estate. Henry just got back from studying abroad in Spain. Wow. And he, of course, was really, really missing us. So we had to go visit him. Um,
Yes.
and got to take my folks over there to go visit him. And then Healy, our daughter, is at Colorado College, and she's playing basketball and lacrosse at Colorado
Oh,
College. And so we got to go. We've been able to watch her play some hoops, and she's doing well and having a lot of fun. So yeah, the kids are all good. If you're only as happy as your least happy kid, so far so good, man. And then my wife still likes me most of the time. It's kind of that. I feel like if she's happy with me about 80% of the time, I feel like I'm winning. If she was happy with me 100% of the time, then I'm just not trying very hard. But yeah, no, it's life is good, man, and we're enjoying the freedom that comes with being empty nesters and have a lot of fun.
that's incredible. All right. Well, in this way, you're a better high school quarterback than me. You're a better college quarterback than me. You're a way better pro quarterback than me. You're probably a better coach than me. But I have this on you. You have to turn 50 before me. So you turned 50 in February, correct? I'm in March.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it. Shoot, man. When we were young, 50 seemed ancient, and
Oh
now I'm
my
like,
gosh.
God, like 50 is the new 30.
No, I interrupt you, but I shaved the other morning or trimmed, and I looked down in the sink and there was no black hair. It was all gray. And this is the only hair I have, Drew. So like I try to take care of this. And now
I
it's all
know,
gray and old. I feel broken and old, my man.
I know, man, I know, but it sure has been a good run so far, man. I'm looking forward to the rest of it too. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. How blessed are we? How blessed are we, man? We got to be NFL quarterbacks for a long time. Um, you know, great families, and now get to go back and put it back out there, coaching kids, and trying to put positive stuff into the world, man. It's been a blessed life, and I never take it for granted, man. And I know you don't either. It's really been a hell of a run, and I'm enjoying it and looking forward to the next chapter. It's trying to see what's around the next corner, and who knows what that's going to be. But it's all been a good run so far, and man, I sure appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the pod. And man, just respect you so much. So thanks so much, Drew.
Likewise, man. Love you, and look forward to getting out there to Nashville and pouring some wine for you and your friends out there. And by the way, 100% appreciate the support. I know you. I know you buy a ton of wine from us every year, and always appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, deal. I can't wait for you to come out. All right, see you, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
And again, thanks to our friends at State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.